The HE1000 was one of the first outrageously expensive planar magnetic headphones that came out in 2015. During this time, there weren't many headphones that cost over $2,000. Even Hifiman's previous flagship, the HE6, only retailed for $1,300. When I first saw and heard it in a local meet back in 2016, I thought to myself, I would never be able to own a pair in a million lifetime. Fast forward to 2023 and I finally have gotten myself a pair thanks to Hifiman. No, not the original version that was released in 2015, obviously, but the latest one, which is the HE1000 Stealth Magnet version, and this is my review of this headphone. Just like any other headphone reviews, my opinion is not influenced by them in any way, shape, or form, and they do not have any editorial influence in this video. They are seeing it the same time as you are seeing it. Go check out the Hifiman HE1000 Stealth Magnet version on hifiman.com. The HE1000 was Hifiman's flagship back in 2015, but it was superseded by the Susvara in 2017. The newer V2 model used to cost a whopping $3,000, but it's gotten a price cut since sometime last year, now only selling for $2,000, and this new HE1000 Stealth Edition subsequently followed the same pricing. That's still a substantial amount, but that's 30% off the original price, which is definitely appealing if you've been eyeing this headphone. Before we dive in, let's talk a little about the HE1000 lineup, which quite frankly can be a little confusing. You have the original model, which is known as the V1, then the V2, which I thought was the model that I was getting, and then the latest iteration, which is the Stealth Magnet version, which some people refer to as V3, while some others call V2 Stealth. All those three look identical, by the way. And then there's the HE1000 SE, which you would think stands for Stealth Edition, but it actually meant Special Edition. Yeah, that's the HE1000 family tree for you. For my own convenience, I will mostly refer to the headphone as the HE1000 throughout this review. Unlike the older HE1000s, the current version now sports a more eco-friendly box that comes with a headphone stand. It's not a premium stand, but it's nonetheless useful and clever, especially since no one thought of this idea before. Now, caring about the environment is very nice of the company, but there are obviously going to be people who will frown upon this decision. Those people that prefer a box or packaging that scales with the price of the headphone. And I guess it's hard to blame them. See, this was the old packaging, which we can argue is more glamorous than the current one. But hey, once the headphone is unpacked, the box just stays somewhere and it just collects dust, so what difference does it make really? Aside from the unit and the stand, the headphone comes with two long cables. One is a single-ended 6.3mm and the other being a balanced XLR. Both of them are of decent quality, neither too stiff nor too tangly. No 3.5mm here, since the headphone is not portable and efficient. Moving on to the headphone's build quality, the HE1000 is one of the more premium feeling Hifiman egg-shaped headphone. It's got some stainless steel in its construction and a leather headband strap as well, unlike its cheaper siblings such as the Aria, Ananda, and Edition X. The pads are also thicker than those mentioned headphones but are of the same quality. The side part is made from synthetic leather and the top is polyester. The headphone weighs 420 grams, but it does feel lighter than that. Now take that with a grain of salt, as I've been mostly using headphones such as the Focal Utopia and the Odyssey LCD2. Overall build quality seems okay and definitely better than the earlier models. The adjustment arms don't get scratched anymore, there's no squeaky or screechy sound when swiveling the cups unlike the earlier models, and the headband strap is put together just right. As a result, you get a fairly comfortable headphone, much like Hifiman's other egg-shaped cans. That is again if you're used to these types of headphones are not coming from, say, a Sony or Bose noise canceller. On the flip side, it will have no problems fitting any size of ears, and the pads are also deep enough that you won't feel your ears touching the inside. The cups put a bit of pressure on the jaw mainly because of how humongous they are. No, it doesn't have the luxurious feeling of a leather ear pad, but it's relatively comfortable for long listening sessions. The suspension strap also feels good, no hot spot or weight distribution imbalance in my experience. Passive noise isolation needs no further elaboration with how open these back parts of the cups are. Definitely not one you'd use in an office environment unless your colleagues are cool enough to hear speaker-like volume from within your area. Moving on to the most important part, the sound. I've listened to many egg-shaped headphones in the past, such as the Aria, the Edition XS, Edition X, and Ananda, and they all have the resemblance with the HE1000 in terms of sound character. Except that the HE1000 is much more pleasing and better than those. It is nebulous, big and diffused. I'd argue this is the type of headphone to impress your friends aside from the HD800S. It's got a lively sound yet a soft and bouncy presentation. In terms of tuning, it is what I would call as neutral bright. It's got a bit of a treble shelf, which gives that extra bite and zing to everything around those frequencies. It's just a bit and not what I would call excessive. The bass extension is great. Despite being soft, I thought dynamics are pretty good. Obviously not similar to Focal or Odyssey, but I wouldn't call the bass in these headphones loose or flabby. I always think this is a trade-off of having this cup design where the focus of the overall sound is diffused to that size instead of punching it straight to your ears. The mid-range is warm and you get that sense of tonal richness around the upper bass and lower mid-range where the transition is cohesive. No disconnect, no bleed, and everything seems connected as it should be. Normally you get the middle mid-range to upper mid-range recession from these egg-shaped Hifimans, but I didn't hear it to be as scooped as others. It's not as forward as the Focal Clear, for example, or the older Odyssey full-size headphones around the 1 to 3K area, but it also doesn't sound as distant as the Aria and the older Edition X, in my opinion. As mentioned earlier, the treble is a tad accentuated, causing it to be a bit bright and hazy even. It does make things sound lively in a good way, but also bright in a bad way depending on your preference. I would say that the treble has a bit of a brittle or metallic texture, but less so than the Aria V2 or Stealth from my memory. The slight emphasis of the higher frequencies is not an issue for me except when I'm cranking up the volume loudly, where those same frequencies tend to get emphasized even more. Overall though, I'd still clarify the upper frequencies as smooth sounding and resolving enough for a headphone of this price. I've already mentioned the soundstage being big and kind of mesmerizing at first, especially if you're coming from headphones with smaller stage. With the HE1000, things are kind of floaty, which is a bit odd and even unnatural, but also pleasing most of the time. This exact same reason is why it's perfect for genres such as acoustics, jazz, classical, and orchestral music. I thought that the way it images is slightly better than Hifiman's own Aria, Ananda, and Edition XS despite the similar cup sizes. The drawback of this approach is the immediacy and punch are somewhat reduced because they are so spread across the stage. You don't get that same dynamism from a headphone whose stage is more intimate, but boy, it's pleasant to have a stage that is this big. If you can look past the soft presentation, you'd find that the HE1000 is fairly snappy and fast. It's a detailed headphone which is helped by its big stage. I think the hazy treble deducts a bit of points here overall, but I find the HE1000 to be convincingly better than both the Aria and the Clear in terms of detail retrieval. The HE1000 Stealth is not the hardest headphone to drive. It can get loud enough off a portable or your laptop's audio output, but the sound is not nearly good. So get an amplifier. If you're buying an expensive headphone like this anyway, make sure you're doing enough to maximize the sound you can get from it. And no, you don't need a speaker amp. Those days are long gone, but what you need is a decent power and good synergy. In my own tests, it doesn't play well from a smartphone or a laptop out, and it could also sound poor if you have a neutral or a bright amplifier. Now, I don't have the luxury of testing it with myriads of different amplifiers and sources, but I can tell it doesn't sound good off a THX 887, where the treble is rougher and the dynamics are a bit hampered. My main amp is the trusty old Luxman P1U, and from there it sounded fine. It had more than enough power to drive the headphone and make it sound resolving. My suggestion if you're looking to get this and you already have an amplifier is to bring your amp to the store to test it. Trust me, it's worth the effort. And if you don't have an amplifier at the time being, maybe skip the HE1000 for now. In terms of EQ, the HE1000 is more than fine. Planar magnetic headphones in general have lower distortion, which makes them responsive to EQ. For my personal tastes, I just dialed down the treble a little and didn't bother changing anything else, though your mileage may vary here. Having said that, the stock tuning is perfectly okay for me as well. If I'm not allowed to EQ, it really wouldn't prevent me from using this headphone for music listening. Let's move on to some quick comparisons with headphones I have recent access to, starting with some Hifimans. I would say the HE1000 is most comparable to my trusty old Edition X, which was touted as somewhat of a portable headphone because it plays so well from a phone, but it's not, a portable really because of its big size and lack of isolation. The Edition X is less technically capable, less bright, but excessively so. I would say that it's just as pleasant to listen to without all the liquidity and resolve of the more expensive HE1000. the Edition X's stage and dynamics are also not as good as the HE1000. Now, compared to the Value King, the Edition XS, the HE1000 is very clearly far from it in every aspect. The one thing the Edition X has going for it is closer adherence to the Harman target curve, which is maybe a factor for some. Otherwise, I would not really say they're comparable in terms of like technical capability, but it remains to be a very good entry-level option to the elongated Hifiman lineup. I do not own an Aria anymore, but based on my memory and recent listen on a store, the HE1000 is a bit more nuanced in the mid-range and less coarse in the treble, while having a better stage and imaging. I reviewed the Aria V2 a couple of years ago, and my findings back then still hold true when comparing it to the HE1000. Now, comparing it to the Focals, it's the exact opposite, and what's really gonna factor in here is your preference. Punchy, less bright, but with a smaller stage, go with Focals. Bigger soundstage, lesser mid-range forwardness, softer character, go with the HE1000. The Utopia, for obvious reasons, edges it in all the nuances, liquidity, and smoothness, but it's neck and neck with the Clear. I know the competing product in their lineup is the Aria, but I feel the Clear is also close to the HE1000 overall, but with different set of strengths. To wrap things up, the HE1000 Stealth Magnet Edition was an enjoyable listen when all things are said and done. Despite being a bit bright for my liking for some genres, it still managed to wow me with its big stage, floaty imaging, and soft character with just enough dynamism. If Hifiman is your thing in terms of tonal preference and all that stuff, I would consider the HE1000 as an endgame, much like the Clear is for Focal if you don't want to be poor. As is the case with pricey headphones, you need a decent source and amp to get the best value out of it. So again, if you can test the pair extensively or even take it home with your setup, I highly suggest you do it. Like I said in some of my other expensive headphone reviews, when you get one at this price range, you're throwing off value out of the window. If you want to make a decision based on value alone, get the Sundara or the Edition XS. But if all you are about is sound, then yeah, I think you will like the HE1000 if its tonality and character happen to be your preference. It's also a good pair to add to a headphone collection in case you don't have a pair that has the character of the HE1000 and you have plenty of money to burn. That's about it for this review. Thumbs up the video if you like it, subscribe for more headphone.ph video reviews, and visit headphone.ph for the text version of this review. I'll see you guys next time.